The rain drummed softly against the windows of Claire's Chicago apartment as she huddled over her laptop, finishing a client project. The room was dim, except for the blue glow of the screen, a half-empty mug of coffee beside her. When her phone buzzed, she almost ignored it, until she saw Ethan Wells's name. Sophie's fiancé, her best friend's soon-to-be husband. The clock read 11:47 p.m. Claire hesitated, heart skipping. Why would he be calling her at this hour? She finally answered, confusion lacing her voice. But Ethan didn't seem to notice the line had connected. Then came the words that froze her blood. His voice was low, intimate, almost aching. I wish it were you instead of her. You make me feel alive. For a second, Claire thought she'd misheard. Then came a woman's soft laugh, light, teasing. But it wasn't Sophie's. The sound made her stomach twist. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her fingers hovered over the phone as the call ended abruptly. The silence afterward roared in her ears. Her thoughts scrambled. What did he mean? Was it some kind of cruel joke? And who was that woman? Her phone vibrated again, jolting her out of the fog. A new message from Sophie flashed across the screen. Hey, Claire! Ethan's acting so weird lately. Think he's planning something romantic. Wish me luck tomorrow. Claire stared at the text, her throat tightening. Sophie was in love, excited for a surprise, while Claire's chest filled with unease. The sound of Ethan's voice replayed in her mind, each word sinking deeper. She wanted to dismiss it, pretend it meant nothing. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and she knew sleep wouldn't come that night. Morning light seeped through the blinds of Claire's apartment, casting pale stripes across her unmade bed. She sat with a cup of coffee gone cold, her thoughts tangled in the events of the night before. Claire had always been the quiet one, the steady friend who listened more than she spoke, who fixed others' problems while neglecting her own. Her loyalty to Sophie was unwavering, almost sisterly. They'd met in college, Sophie, the magnetic whirlwind of confidence and laughter. Claire, her grounding force. Their friendship had endured heartbreaks, career shifts, and the slow march into adulthood. Until now, nothing had shaken it. 3 years earlier, Ethan Wells had appeared, an effortlessly charming man who seemed tailor-made for Sophie. He was ambitious, yet gentle, protective yet playful. Claire remembered the first time she met him, how his gaze lingered a second too long, how their conversation flowed too easily. Before Sophie ever came into the picture, Claire and Ethan had shared one night of connection, not physical, but something almost worse. It was emotional, electric, full of what-ifs. She had buried that moment deep, convincing herself it meant nothing. But now, after that midnight call, those forgotten sparks began to smolder again. At Sophie's engagement brunch, Claire dressed carefully, masking the turmoil behind polite smiles. The restaurant buzzed with laughter, champagne flutes clinking, the scent of flowers heavy in the air. Sophie was radiant, glowing with love, while Ethan played the attentive fiancé perfectly. But when their eyes met, Claire saw it. A flash of guilt or recognition, or something unspoken that made her chest tighten. Sophie beamed, introducing Claire to guests as her ride or die, her forever friend. Claire smiled through the ache, each word slicing deeper. The irony burned. Sophie trusted her completely, and Claire was holding the one secret that could shatter everything. That night, Claire sat curled on her couch, the television flickering, unnoticed in the background when her phone buzzed again. The number was unfamiliar. If you care about Sophie, tell her not to marry Ethan. Her pulse spiked. The message was chillingly direct, too specific to ignore. She stared at it for minutes, convincing herself it was some prank or mistake. She deleted it, but unease crept in like a slow poison. Sleep refused to come. The next morning, Sunlight felt too harsh, the world too loud. When another message arrived, check Ethan's private Instagram, look under highlights, Vegas 2023. Her stomach dropped. Her fingers trembled as she followed the instructions, the act feeling almost sinful. She opened Ethan's private account, heart pounding. Under Vegas 2023, there were flashing lights, laughter, friends. Then, one video that stopped her breath. Ethan was at a crowded club, music thundering. The same woman's voice from that late-night call giggled, leaning close, her lips brushing his ear. Ethan's hand rested possessively on her waist, and then he kissed her neck. A moment intimate, damning. Before Claire could replay it, the story vanished, deleted, like it was never there. Panic twisted in her chest. What had she just seen? For days, Claire wrestled with herself, caught between loyalty and truth. Maybe she'd misunderstood. Maybe there was an explanation. But the unease clung to her like a shadow. Then, as if fate refused to give her peace, she ran into Ethan at a cafe. His expression was composed, his charm effortless, but his eyes were sharp, probing. "You heard something you weren't supposed to, didn't you?" His tone was casual, too calm. Claire's throat tightened. He leaned closer, voice low. "Let it go, Claire. You'll only hurt Sophie." No denial. Just warning. In that moment, she realized Ethan wasn't afraid of being caught. He was confident she wouldn't dare. Days stretched into an exhausting blur for Claire. Every conversation with Sophie felt like walking through a minefield. Sophie was radiant, glowing with pre-wedding joy, chattering about flower arrangements, her honeymoon plans, and how lucky she felt to have Ethan. Claire forced smiles, her heart twisting tighter with each word. The guilt was unbearable. Every laugh felt false, every hug tainted by the secret she carried. And yet, the memory of Ethan's voice, his threat masked as advice, echoed endlessly. "Don't ruin her big day because of your feelings for me." Those words stung like poison, breaking something fragile inside her. Ethan's calm cruelty haunted her. He had turned her silence into complicity, making her doubt her own perceptions. Was she imagining it all? Claire couldn't trust her emotions anymore. Desperate for clarity, she turned to her older brother, Liam, a sharp-minded lawyer with a protective streak. Over coffee, she poured out everything: the call, the messages, the deleted video. Liam listened in grim silence before speaking carefully. "If you tell her, make sure you have proof. People don't forgive messengers easily." His warning hit hard. Sophie's love for Ethan ran deep. Without evidence, Claire would look like the jealous friend. So Claire began digging, quietly, methodically. Late nights turned into investigations, old photos, social media archives, backups of messages. What she uncovered made her blood run cold. Ethan's company, Wells & Co. Source, was under a discreet financial probe for fraud. Buried in public records, she found a name, Tara Lind, his co-worker, the same woman from the Vegas video. Tara wasn't just his mistress. She was listed as his accomplice. And worse, the investigation hinted at money being funneled through Sophie's family's business accounts. Claire's breath caught. Ethan wasn't just betraying Sophie emotionally, he was destroying her future. And he knew Sophie would never believe Claire without undeniable proof. The sky over Chicago burned orange as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows over the church courtyard. Claire waited for Ethan near the back entrance, her heart pounding in her ears. The air between them crackled with tension when he finally arrived, smirking, impeccably dressed in his rehearsal suit. She met his eyes, voice steady but cold. "If you marry her, I'll expose everything," she said. For a moment, surprise flickered across his face. Then he laughed, low and cruel. "You're too late, Claire. No one will believe you, not even Sophie. You've always been jealous of her." He turned, walking away, certain he'd won, but he didn't notice the faint red light blinking from the phone in her hand. The conversation was recorded. At the rehearsal dinner that evening, laughter filled the candlelit room. Sophie was radiant in white, surrounded by friends and family, her happiness almost painful to watch. When she asked Claire to give a short speech, everyone applauded, expecting sentimental warmth. Claire stood, trembling but resolute. Her voice wavered at first as she spoke about friendship, about truth, about how love only thrives when built on honesty. Ethan's smile faltered slightly. Then Claire set her phone on the table and pressed play. His voice filled the hall, cold, manipulative. "You're imagining things. Don't ruin her big day because of your feelings for me." Then the second line followed, sharp as a blade. "No one will believe you. Not even Sophie." The room fell dead silent. Forks froze mid-air. Sophie's face drained of color. Ethan lunged toward the phone, fury flashing in his eyes, but Liam was already on his feet. Calm and deliberate, he intercepted Ethan's movement and held up his own device. "It's too late," he said evenly. "The recording and the financial files have already been sent to Sophie's father and the authorities." The doors opened. 2 police officers stepped in, their presence commanding the room. Gasps rippled through the guests as Ethan's facade finally cracked. He was handcuffed before he could speak, muttering curses as the officers led him away. Sophie stood frozen, then crumpled into Claire's arms, sobbing uncontrollably, not just for Ethan's betrayal, but for the illusion of love that had been built on deceit. The wedding was called off that night, the flowers wilting in silence, and for the first time in years, Claire felt both shattered and free. Weeks passed, and the chaos slowly faded into whispers. Ethan's arrest had made headlines, while Sophie withdrew from the world, moving in with her sister to recover. The mansion that once buzzed with wedding plans now stood empty, a symbol of what could have been. Claire hesitated for days before visiting, rehearsing what she might say. When Sophie finally opened the door, her eyes were tired, rimmed red from crying, but there was clarity there too. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Sophie's voice broke softly. "You saved me from a life built on lies. How could I hate you for that?" Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she stepped forward, and Sophie pulled her into a trembling embrace. The hug carried both grief and forgiveness, an unspoken acknowledgement that love, trust, and betrayal had all collided in ways neither could have predicted. Their friendship, though scarred, still held something sacred. But as they pulled apart, Claire sensed that things would never be quite the same again. Sophie needed time to rebuild herself. Claire needed to rediscover who she was beyond the shadows of loyalty and guilt that had defined her for so long. It was a quiet, bittersweet parting. In the weeks that followed, Claire began to rebuild her life with purpose. She quit her job at the design firm, the place that once felt safe but now seemed stifling, and joined a nonprofit supporting women who had suffered emotional manipulation and financial abuse. Helping others gave her a sense of healing she hadn't known she needed. At night, she began journaling again, filling pages with thoughts, fears, and fragile hopes. It was something she hadn't done since before Ethan, before Sophie's engagement, before her world had fractured. Through writing, she found herself again. Not the quiet observer, but the woman who finally chose truth, even when it hurt. Months later, winter had softened Chicago into a quiet hush. Snow dusted the streets outside Claire's apartment as she worked on a grant proposal for the nonprofit. Life had regained a calm rhythm, gentle, steady, no longer haunted by echoes of the past. Then one evening, her phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Sophie. No text, just a voice note. Claire hesitated before pressing play. Sophie's voice filled the room, warm, steady, and raw with emotion. "These were the vows I was supposed to say," she began softly, "but I rewrote them for myself." Claire's breath caught as she listened. Sophie's words flowed like poetry, pain and clarity woven together. Love isn't about possession. It's about truth, and sometimes The truest love is the one that breaks you free. The message ended, and silence lingered. Claire sat still, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, those words didn't sting. They soothed. Sophie had found her own healing, her own voice beyond heartbreak. Claire replayed the note, this time smiling through her tears. It was no longer a symbol of what was lost, but of what was reclaimed. Both of them had survived love's cruel lessons. As the soft piano hum from her playlist filled the room, Claire whispered her closing thoughts into the quiet, recording them for her journal. I thought betrayal would destroy me, but it just made me see real love doesn't whisper in secret. It stands in the open, unafraid of being heard. Her voice trembled, but it carried strength now, a quiet, unshakable peace. Outside, snow fell steadily against the glass. The camera of her life, if there were one, would fade to black. No grand finale, just stillness, survival, and the beauty of finally choosing herself.